think, Paul.
In the context of tax reduction and health care, where are you standing raising a cigarette tax?
That's not something we've discussed as a caucus, but I can tell you that at this point, to talk of raising any taxes in West Virginia, in our opinion, is going contrary to where we should be moving. Because we are, as we said, the people of West Virginia are overtaxed as it is, are struggling to make ends meet. And again, when you start talking about individual taxes like that, you're still placing a burden on West Virginians, and instead of looking at ways to cut government and make it more efficient, there always seems to be this effort to go out, well, we don't want to do that. We have to go out and find another revenue source. We've got to find another way to tax the people of West Virginia. That's beside how you feel about the possible incentives of health, but in terms of just the philosophy of trying to go out every time and look for a new tax, to put an additional tax burden on West Virginians, that we don't believe is the direction we should go. What else? That's right.
Have you begun identifying places to cut government?
Well, as we have talked about here, I think that we really need to look more on a broad spectrum. We have a budgetary process established back in the 70s through the Modern Budget Amendment. And that process says the governor will give us a budget. And it's our role as the legislature to take that budget and move forward in how we go about prioritizing the spending of West Virginia. I think that that budget should be placed on the table. There shouldn't be any assumptions anywhere in that budget that we're going to spend exactly what we spent last year and add to that. I think we should really look at our priorities collectively, all 100 members of the House, and set a budget that truly reflects the priorities based on the spending that we can do under the current economy. So, if you want to, in terms of talk about specifics here, I think there are, throughout the budget, areas, particularly in terms of unclassified line items throughout that budget, where we're giving agencies just the ability to spend without any accountability. And I think that would be one area throughout that budget that we need to look at and really nail down what is the money being spent for. We see every year money that's swept from accounts that was not spent, that we put into the budget this year, next year, they just turn around and give it back to that agency without any accountability as to how they're going to spend that money. And so I think we can look at that throughout this budget and look at ways that we can certainly take that money back and give it back to the people of West Virginia, as we've talked about. And certainly that doesn't, we're not talking in those areas drastic cuts. We realize that there are basic services that have to be provided to the people of West Virginia. And we can give money back to the people to allow them to spend without cutting into those basic services. There is so much inefficiency in our budget process and in each budget that we pass that there is certainly money that can be given back to the people of West Virginia without making drastic cuts in services.
Right, to that point, the one bill that we have been supportive of, and it's been implemented nationally, as well as many other states, is the Budget and Spending Transparency Act. And this would allow, keeping in theme with our agenda, people to go online, search the budget, and find programs that they're interested in, and maybe they can recommend places where they feel that we should be cutting spending. So it would also empower people, but it also allow for more sunlight to shine on the budget process and more sunlight to shine on our budget. Because right now, if the average citizen or even us want to try to get information out of the budget, you have to pull teeth to do it, and even then you may not be able to understand it. The governor has taken the step to put the stimulus money on a website. He's already got the ability right there with the website existing. He can just get people to input the data into that current website, and we can have the transparency of our budget online, which a lot of states are doing, and even the national government has done that. So that would be a good solution, a good step forward to shining light on our process, giving people more opportunity to get involved in their government as well.
Yeah, if I could just add to that also. You think about the position we're in here. We have proposed tax cuts virtually, every year. We call you guys in and have a press conference, and somebody says, where are you going to cut the budget? And this year, the governor's going to come through and across the board take 3 to 4% out of the budget, $120 million. And nobody's worried about losing that money. So really, what position does that put us in? There is money there, there has been money there, to cut these taxes and return it to the people of West Virginia. And you think of the position that the governor's in here. 3 months ago, he called us into special session to give away $35 million in bonuses, and now we're facing a budget deficit of $100 and some million. So I think, you got to question the credibility of the financial estimates when you're talking with an administration that's been here 5 or 6 years and doesn't know from a 2-month to 3-month swing that we've had to $35 million in bonuses to a $100 million deficit. I mean, I think the press ought to be all over that.
Well, if I could just add one other thing to that. Last year when we were dealing with the unemployment bill, suddenly there was a $40 million pot of money there that could be put toward that. $40 million. Many of the tax cuts that we've talked about don't even come up to that.
Right.
And we couldn't do those, but yet we could find $40 million just in an account that someone suddenly discovered in the insurance commissioner's office. So what we're saying is the more accountability and the more of a microscope we can put on the state budgetary process, the more money will be found to do what needs to be done for West Virginia. And that includes the tax reductions, the efficiencies in government, and I think in that sense, everyone in West Virginia wins.
Let me add one other thing. If you look at our budget, there are line items that are basically unspent. They're called unclassified. If you total those unclassified items up, they exceed $1 billion. What's that money spent for? It's unclassified. It's not broken down. So those, could they give those back? Could we use those for tax cuts? Could we use those for other funding? We don't know.
Yeah, just governor's ruled out for the moment employee furloughs. Do you think that's a mistake?
I think we've got to, truthfully, with the challenges we face, talking about ruling out any of those things is premature. Certainly we will try to do what we can within the budget constraints to ensure that we don't have to take drastic steps. But to try to say we can rule out all those things at this point is premature. We do have a budget challenge before us. But not only, again, when we talk about a budget challenge, we also see that as a budget opportunity, because if we're going to take, as Mitch said, the governor's already talked about cutting throughout the agencies. So this is an opportunity we can take, I believe, and I think our caucus believes, that we can take this opportunity to truly determine whether the spending of these agencies is justified. And if, in terms of furloughs and other solutions like that, I don't think we're at the point that we need to do that at this point, but I don't think you could ever rule out and say we'll never do that.
I might add also, I opened up the front page of the paper the other day, and there was $60 million of proposed spending from the Department of Administration for refurbishing the Capitol, for Holly Grove, to the tune of $60 million. And, a part of that is to refurbish the bathrooms here in the Capitol building. And I think in this type of budgetary situation that we're in, that we can wait, a few years to have those types of remodels done with taxpayer money. So $60 million in refurbishing different buildings. Some things are imperative, it's heat and air, but I think there's a lot of things that we can stab off to another year when we're in a better economic situation.
And truthfully, is there anyone in West Virginia who isn't having right now as we speak to cut back? I mean, is there any, I think that most of the people that we represent are in the situation of having to do that. And they expect that of us. They expect us, they're making tough choices, they expect us to make them too. And it goes back to the whole theme we're talking about. It's their government. It should reflect their values. And it should, and if the people of West Virginia are hurting, they don't expect their government to go ahead spending as it has in the past. They expect tough choices to be made just as they're making tough choices each day. Any other questions? Thank you again for being here. We appreciate it. We will certainly share with you as we go through the session the progress of these issues and others that will come up, and look forward to working with you this session. Thank you.